First of all, thanks for all of you for being here. I want to introduce my good friend and my manager, Peter Hackman, and I met Peter a couple of years ago. He has an organization called Fans of Film Music, and he invited me as a composer, and I sat on a panel like this with a lot of amazing film composers, and Peter has become not only my social media manager, but he's recently got into the artist management business, and I'm one of his first artists that was signed. So I have Peter up here because my hearing is a little bit screwed up, from being a rock and roll musician. So, between the two of you, you can help interpret what people are going to say. But main thing I want to say is I am so touched that my music is still of interest to people after all these years, and I want to thank all of you for being such loyal fans. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's interesting. How do you get into that kind of specific job? I mean, you're composing music for movies.
Yes.
That's pretty niche.
I didn't. It's funny, I moved out to LA to be a session musician. I had no idea, no aspirations to be a songwriter or a film composer, and I fell into it because about a year after moving to LA, and this does not happen very often, people can move to LA and take years to make any connections. I got really lucky. Within a year of moving to Los Angeles, I started working with Frank Stallone, who is Sylvester Stallone's brother. And the first project that I worked on in Hollywood was a major movie called Staying Alive back in 1983.
I've seen it.
Which is the sequel to Saturday
Night Fever.
Yeah.
And can I tell the story about it?
Please do, yes.
Yeah,
Please
okay.
do.
This is kind of, Peter's heard this story a million times.
It's a good story.
So we were at rehearsal, Frank and I. We were in a band playing Frank's music. And his brother came over to the rehearsal hall. And he told Frank of this new movie he was just signed on to write and direct called Staying Alive, sequel to Saturday Night Fever. And he said, Frank, I'm going to be honest with you, there's going to be a lot of major artists, songwriters, producers submitting material for this. But if you want to write and submit something, I can tell you at least it will be considered. But you have to know that no song is going to get accepted into this movie just because you're my brother. I got to be very careful about that. Frank understood, and over the next 4 weeks, we wrote 5 songs, 2 with the help of a third collaborator named Joe Esposito. And Frank paid to have these songs recorded in a professional studio, and he took the cassette tape, it was cassettes back then, over to his brother, and he played all 5 songs. His brother said, sorry, Frank, I hate all these songs. I hate them. He didn't just say, I'm not sure they're right for the movie. He said, I hate these songs. And he said, sorry, but you're my brother, I can be honest with you, and that's the deal. And I credit Frank for not giving up. He came back to me the next day, and he said, let's write one more song. And he said, I have an idea of what my brother's looking for, and if I'm right, we didn't give him the style of this song in the first batch, and nobody else that is submitting material for the movie is giving him this. And I said, well, what do you have in mind? He said, I think we should write something rock, up-tempo, high energy, with theatrical elements. That was the parameters that Frank gave me. So, sat in my garage, I had an electric grand piano, and I sat there and started playing ideas with those parameters in mind. And about 30 minutes later, we had an idea, a song idea, and we recorded it onto this ancient, crappy cassette boombox onto a cassette. And my assumption was that we were going to take that tape and use it as a reference to go into studio, finish writing the song, finish recording it. And Frank says, no, I'm going to take it right over to my brother. And I said, that doesn't make any sense because you paid good money to have us record it professionally, the first 5 songs. Why would we do it any differently? He says, because I have a good feeling about this that, if nothing else, it'll give my brother an idea as to whether we're on the right track or not. I said, okay. Took my wife Beth out to dinner that night, and when we got back, there was a message on our answering machine. The message light was blinking, and I had a pretty good idea that it was Frank telling me one thing or another, and I had a pretty good idea it wasn't going to be great news based on the rejection of the first 5 songs. But it wasn't Frank, it was Sylvester, and he said, "Vinny, home run, can't wait to hear the song when it's done." And that song became Far From Over, which ended up being kind of the theme song for the movie. And it was played more than any other song, like by the Bee Gees or any other major artist.
It's also the first song you hear in the movie, too.
It is. It opens up the movie. And in fact, it was just used in this latest season of American Horror Story, like the very first episode of the newest season. It's an 80s theme for this season, and they opened up with Far From Over, and it was just such a cool thing. But anyway, that turned everything around. Sylvester Stallone, Frank called me the next day after, we had this great reaction to Far From Over. And he was laughing. He said, "You're never going to believe this, but my brother found a place in the movie for all the 5 songs that he rejected in the first place." So I went from 1 song to 6 songs.
I asked Vince, I said, "Did you record that message on your answering machine?" And he said, "No."
No,
I would have.
I wish I would have.
I mean, how many people can say they had Sylvester Stallone call their home?
And he didn't have to call me. Frank could have called me, but I know Frank said to him, "You know what? Vince would really get a kick out of it if one of the biggest movie stars in the world, who happens to be my brother, calls him and leaves a message on his machine." And that was one of the most important messages I ever got, because it started the ball rolling for my career. Far From Over led to those other 5 songs being accepted into the movie, and he had us write a 7th song. So this was my first entrance into Hollywood. I had no aspirations of being a songwriter or a composer. I just kind of fell into it through working with Frank Stallone. And of course, the Stallone brothers have been very good to me. That was the beginning of a long relationship with both of them that eventually led to Rocky IV. So that's the long answer to your question.
And interesting, he called you Vinny.
He did call me.
He nicknamed you Vinny.
He did.
Frank Stallone did do a voice of a Transformer.
Say again?
Frank Stallone did do a voice of a Transformer. He did.
Yes.
I thought that was cool.
Yes. He didn't do a voice on Transformers.
He did one for Robots in Disguise. That was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Thunderhoof.
No.
Yeah, he was Thunderhoof.
Really? I honestly didn't know that. That's why I'm puzzled.
Yeah.
Frank Stallone did?
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
We're all learning something.
Yes. Sorry for my confusion. I just didn't know that.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.